Huh?
Not anymore. You're watching Pat Plays. It's time for some more coffee and nostalgia, and today it's also time for part 2 of my Wormz videos. That's right, today we're finally going to look at the Wormz graphic novel adaptation. Just to bring you up to speed again, Wormz is a film that I made in 2004 with my friend Jared, and this graphic novel adaptation is something that I made 3 years later, around 2007. And of course it's way more epic than the film that we made, and it contains a lot more things that obviously isn't possible when you're 12 years old with a VHS camcorder. So the whole story of Wormz basically has elements from The Terminator and Back to the Future, but I'd say that it's mainly based on Bill and Ted, since the whole thing is about a time traveling duo. And since this is Pat Plays, let's quickly take a look at my Bill and Ted DVDs and the Blu-ray. So yeah, there they are, the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey DVDs. As you can see, they're not in the best conditions because I've had these things for absolutely years and years, and they have been watched and watched many, many a times. They only ever really released one DVD box set, and this was of course a US only release, and that also included a third disc which was of the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure cartoon series. But recently I did actually purchase this US only release of the Blu-ray. This was released by Shout Factory, and it includes both the films Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey. It's got some absolutely awesome artwork on the front there. Inside you've got some picture cards, and you've got a cool little Wild Stallions plectrum. And there's the films, disc 1, Excellent Adventure, disc 2, Bogus Journey, and disc 3 is tons of special features, and most of the special features and documentaries were made especially for this release, which is really cool. So that's the Bill and Ted stuff out the way. Let's get into this Wormz graphic novel. So there we can see on the front, Wormz, squish them before they squish you, by Patrick Holt. First thing I want to address again before we get stuck in is the actual look of the Wormz in this comic. Now I knew that the style of drawing was my own, but I did remember getting the idea to have the eyes on top of antennas on the heads from something, and I recently remembered what it was. This here is the outer cover for my year 7 and year 8 high school art book. At the time I was pretty big into skateboarding, and I've cut out some pictures here of Rodney Mullen. He was my favourite at the time. There's some shots here of him doing a primo slide. Up there on the front in the top right, you've got this weird model of, well, I guess a worm, but he's got arms and boxing gloves. No idea why. I've never seen them in anything since that. So yeah, and as you can see, it bears quite a striking resemblance to the Wormz in my comic. So that's where the idea for the look of the Wormz came from. Okay. Let's actually get into this and start turning some pages. So it all starts off in the future, the year 2037. The world is dominated by these genetically enhanced worms. There you've got the scientist looking at specimen number 23, which is a lot stronger than the rest of them. So basically he breaks out and he's like the Lord Worm, and he leads the worms onto the streets to begin their reign of terror. But luckily, there was one soldier willing enough to stop the worms, and his name was Patrick Holt. And yeah, that's me there with a dead worm and a machine gun. So this part here is showing how the Lord Worm picks one of his minions to time travel back in time in order to kill me, when he was younger. So basically like the Terminator, killing John Connor when he was younger, in order to stop me from winning the war of the future for the humans. So this worm minion, as you can see, gets told to get inside a time traveling shoebox. There he goes, he disappears, and there you go. And so the Lord sent that dumb shit back in time to when Patrick was only a teenager. But his first victim was not Patrick. It was his best friend, Jed. So that's me and Jared there. Jared's been acting kind of weird. And then this is a cool little sequence where the worm reveals itself and comes out of his mouth. Look at that. Geez Louise, Papa Cheese. You Tenacious D fans out there will probably recognise that line. The worm reveals its plan, says that it's come back in time to kill me, but then I grab it, pull it out of Jared's mouth, throw it to the ground. But before we can do anything, it escapes in its time-travelling shoebox. Did that thing just disappear inside a shoebox? I think that was its time machine. It's what? Well, you see, so I explain everything to Jared, and we decide that in order to stop this happening again, we have to time travel ourselves to when the worm took over Jared's body and take it by surprise and kill it then. Because as we realised, Buddy's probably gone further into the past to kill us when we were kids. Great Scott, you're right. I know, this is heavy. So it just so happens that Jared's dad is a scientist and he can somehow easily make us our own time machine. This little bit here is an obvious homage to Shaun of the Dead, which is when they are discussing their plan of action. So here we have, so what's the plan? And then I turn with my arms folded, right.
Right. We take Pete's car, we drive over to Mum's, we go in, we take care of Philip.
I'm so sorry, Philip.
Then we grab Mum, we go over to Liz's place, hole up, have a cup of tea, and wait for all this to blow over.
We get your dad to make us a time machine, go back in time to when the worm takes over your body, kill him before he can do it, time travel back to the present and have a nice cup of tea. And 3 days later, he's made the time machine, and there it is. It's a wheelie bin. It's a smegging wheelie bin. Any fans of Red Dwarf out there? So we set everything up on this wheelie bin with a calculator on it, and we both squeeze ourselves inside it. That's a pretty funny shot there of us both in. Well, I'm comfortable. Me too. And then the time machine's whirring and fuzzing, and then poof, it disappears. 3 days earlier, we've landed. So because they've only gone back in time 3 days, they're trying to figure out if it's actually worked. But then it gets proven for them because they see Jared from the past leaving his house. But where's the worm? There it is. Let's get him. Huh? Oh shit. So Jared grabs the worm, I pull a gun out of nowhere, bang, splat. Kill the worm, and there you go. They did it. It's over. This is an obvious Anchorman quote. Where did you get that gun? I don't know.
Rick, where'd you get a hand grenade? I don't know.
So they both hop back inside the time traveling wheelie bin and poof, they're gone. Did we make it? Are we back? We're back. So yeah, job well done, and the two heroes go their separate ways. The teacher will never believe our excuse for taking the day off. Sorry sir, we had to go back in time in a wheelie bin and stop a genetically enhanced worm from killing our past selves. And here we go, I've somehow managed to shoehorn A Nightmare on Elm Street into this Bill and Ted Back to the Future story. So I basically start having a Freddy Krueger nightmare, but instead of him, it's a worm that's obviously made to look all burnt like Freddy. Ha 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 ha. Clang. Die, bitch. Stab. So the worm stabs me and I wake up screaming. So yeah, it was around the time that I made this comic that I was really big into the slasher horror films, especially A Nightmare on Elm Street. And obviously I just had to make up an excuse to squeeze it into the story. So, since I've brought up A Nightmare on Elm Street, let's take a look at some of my Nightmare on Elm Street fan films from the past. Starting with my first one from 2007, this is A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dreamcatcher. And as you can see there, I've used my actual street sign for the title because I grew up on Elm Street. So not much happens in this film. Basically, the last child on Elm Street is being protected by his dream catcher. He comes home to find that it's gone and his mum says that he doesn't need it anymore, which results in Freddy coming back for him.
What is it?
Sport, but just to
Mum, where's my dream catcher?
Oh, I've thrown it away.
Why did you throw it away?
Well, you're safe now, you don't need it anymore.
Ugh.
So next up, from 2008, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Last Child. So this is just your bog standard Nightmare on Elm Street fan film. It's basically just an updated version of the one you saw before. And the main part of it that's updated is the fact that I have a full Freddy Krueger outfit, including the mask and a metal glove. And I was so buzzing with this whole outfit that, of course, I made this film purposefully just to show it off. I also made it to show off some particle effects that I'd started practicing with, and obviously I thought that they'd do well in the dream sequence of the film.
You think you've got what it takes?
Next up is a bit of an odd one from 2009. This is a short, informative sketch video called Think, Never Eat Cheese Before Bedtime.
I'm Patrick Holt, and I'm urging you never to eat cheese before bedtime, or something like this could happen to you.
This is basically a short sketch where my character is eating cheese before he goes to sleep, and his friend, portrayed by Joe Andrew, warns him that he's going to have nightmares.
Hey, Patty! Oh, Joe! You frickin' scared me!
Eat me.
What?
Eat me.
Okay!
Some people wait a lifetime for a moment like this. Some people search forever for that one special kiss.
And of course, he does have nightmares, and who else shows up but Freddy Krueger.
Hey man, what you doing? Oh, I couldn't sleep, so I just thought I'd get a glass of milk. What are you doing in my house again? Oh, nothing. Just this. What's the matter? Didn't you know that cheese gives you nightmares?
So there you go. Never eat cheese before bedtime, or else Freddy Krueger will get you. And lastly, we've got one from 2010. This was made by myself and Aki way before we started the whole Pat and Aki stuff. And this one is called Patrick Holt's Nightmare. Obviously that's a little play on the title Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So this one is another unfinished project. This is like only half of the film. It starts off with me playing myself as this big Nightmare on Elm Street fan. There I am falling asleep whilst watching the film. And it's because of this that when I'm dreaming, I somehow summon Freddy Krueger. And because I'm the only person who remembers him, he wants to use me as a vessel so that he can break through to the real world and continue his killing there.
Well, if it isn't my biggest fan. What do you want? I need you to kill for me.
No, I'm not gonna do it. This is crazy. This isn't even happening.
No? Well then, we'll just have to do it the hard way, won't we?
And what comes next is probably one of the goriest scenes that I've ever filmed. So there's Freddy literally using me to break through into the real world out of the dream world. So Aki comes to the house to check up on me and notices that obviously I'm not there, so he just leaves. But he gets followed home by Freddy. And then you get this cool little chase sequence.
I'm gonna get you.
And then there's this slow stalking bit. And it all ends in Aki escaping from the house, and then you get this creepy final shot of the silhouette of Freddy from his bedroom window. And that was Patrick Hult's Nightmare from 2010. And that was a quick look at some of my Nightmare on Elm Street fan films from the past. This was Pat Plays, and wait, hold on. What was I doing? Oh yeah, Wormz, graphic novel adaptation. Anyway, so Pat's woken up from his nightmare, he goes to meet Jared, and then, oh shit, the Lord Worm turns up. And why does he look so much bigger than the other worm? Well, that's explained right here. That's because I changed my DNA structure before I came through the time portal, so now I shall easily kill the both of you. So the Lord Worm has travelled back in time to kill both of us and to start his reign of terror then, and to start the war then as well. And that's exactly what he does, he gobbles both of us up whole. There, now that I have killed them myself, it's time to have some fun. Meanwhile, me and Jared are shown falling through this dark abyss, and then we crash through the top of an elevator, which is basically limbo, and we can either go up to heaven or down to hell. And of course, we go down to hell. Down, down, down through a burning ring of fire. We make our way down to floor 666. Thank you for using limbo lifts. Please watch your step as you leave the elevator. And we find ourselves in limbo where there's nothing. And this is where we meet the Grim Reaper, which of course was heavily inspired by Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Whoa. Who are you? Ted. It's the Grim Reaper, dude. Oh. How's it hanging, Death?
So the Grim Reaper explains that he actually wants to help us on our quest in defeating the Lord Worm and to bring us back to life. Because when the future war does happen, he has to reap thousands and millions of souls a day, and it's just far too tiring for him. So in order to go back in time yet again to stop this Lord Worm, he gives us the Back to the Future time machine. It's a time traveling story, so of course I had to get the DeLorean in there. There you've got it from the front with the gull wing doors squeaking up, and then we zoom off with the flux capacitor buzzing behind our heads. It's working! 88 miles per hour! And then we scorch off, and as you can see, we leave the two trails of fire behind us, just like the DeLorean in Back to the Future. And since we're talking about Back to the Future, here's the DVD set which I had growing up. This was my brother's, and as you can see, it's got a lot of wear and tear around the edges, as it's been rewatched time and time again. It's such a good looking trilogy box set. There you've got all the original poster art on the 3 discs. Back to the Future Part 2 and Part 3 there. And this thing has tons and tons of special features that were made specifically for this box set. Absolutely love this thing. And of course, since they're some of my favourite films of all time, I had to update the collection and get the trilogy on Blu-ray. So here we've got the Back to the Future 30th Anniversary Trilogy Blu-ray set. This is basically a Blu-ray version of the trilogy box set I just showed you on DVD, but then it's also got some stuff that was made especially for this 30th anniversary release. So this one is an absolute must. So back to the story, we've gone back in time a few hours to just before we got eaten. We go to find the Lord Worm, and there he is. Very tasty. What? I thought I just ate you two stupid fuckers. So we tell him that we're back and we're ready for the rematch. Ah, so you want to challenge me? Well, I challenge you to a rock-off. Of course, that's again referencing Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny, another comedy duo adventure film, which I was really into at the time. And then this huge speech bubble here is going on about all the things that we've referenced throughout the story and why we can't just then go ahead and have a rock off, just like in The Pick of Destiny. But we can't end all this with a rip-off of Tenacious D's showdown with Beelzebub. What we actually do is rip off Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey yet again. And the plan is, after we beat this guy, we use the time machine. We go back in time to before this fight and set up the things we need to kill him now. So of course I say a chainsaw, and the chainsaw appears for us, and then Jared chooses a bazooka, and then the bazooka appears for him. And then as one last extra for a third team member, I choose Gizmo. Yep, there's Gizmo with his little paperclip bow and arrow. So there we are, ready to take on the Lord Worm. Come get some. So I go ahead and start slicing his stomach open with the chainsaw. Gizmo pulls his bow back and he fires an arrow right into the Lord Worm's eye. Jared, now would be a good time to use that bazooka. And then Jared fires the bazooka missile. That goes right into the Lord Worm's mouth and boom, his head explodes. Well, it looks like everything's all over. Yep, at least for another 30 years. That's what you think. Huh? What's up, guys? So that there is supposed to be Patrick from the future. He's meant to have come back in time to help them fight the Lord Worm, but he was too late because we did it by ourselves. As you can see in the future, he's still choosing the chainsaw as his weapon, and the design of his little mechanical armoured hand right there is of course taken from the design of Ash's hand in the Army of Darkness.
Groovy.
So we basically explain to him that we've already killed the Lord Worm and that he's come back in time for no reason. And then we let him use our time machine to go back to the future. Well, here it is, Future Pat. Oh yeah, I forgot it was a wheelie bin. And then that's it. Future Pat gets in the wheelie bin, he time travels back to the future, and then our friend Lewis turns up and he's like, hey, I've not seen you guys for 2 days. Where have you been? Well, Lewis, we're gonna tell you all about it. And there it is, the 77-page graphic novel version of Wormz. So now that we've finally looked through this adaptation of the film, in the next episode we'll be watching the 2004 movie itself. And believe me, it's gonna be a letdown. Thank you for joining me again for some more coffee and nostalgia. You've been watching Pat Plays, and I will see you next time for part 3 of the Wormz videos.